So presidential candidate Andrew Yang, he had a town hall on CNN yesterday, and he was asked about white nationalists and would he present any kind of legislation to combat them. Now, this is a candidate that's talking about universal basic income, where he wants to give $1,000 a month to all Americans in your back pocket. And, a lot of people, question how he's going to do it, etc. But I want you to hear how he answers this question, and we'll talk about it.
Over the last couple of years, we've seen a resurgence of white nationalist violence. As a survivor of the deadly car attack in Charlottesville, it is important to me that our next president addresses this issue immediately. Please explain how you will work to curtail this problem, and also please explain whether you will support a bill that defines white nationalist violence as terrorism. Well, first, congratulations to you, Constance, for your incredible work. Let's give her a round of applause. And what you've been through. If the camera people permitted it, I would run out and give you a hug right now. I'm going to give you a hug in the next commercial break, because what you've been through sounds incredibly difficult and traumatic. So, to me, right now, this tribalism that's tearing our country apart, it's related to a dysfunctional economy. Because if you feel like you don't have a future and your kids don't have a future, and then someone comes up with this, for example, scapegoating immigrants or hateful ideologies, then you're much more subject to those. So by getting the economic boot off of people's throat, hopefully we can help alleviate this tribalism. I'm inspired by the work of Dia Khan, this filmmaker who engaged in something called anti-hate. And so right now the temptation for many of us is just to condemn racism and hatred, which we should do because it has no place in our society. But then the next step after that is to actually convince the people that these hateful ideologies are incorrect. And that's more difficult, it's more painstaking, but over time, it's our best path forward to hopefully convince people that there is no place for hate in the United States of America.
Mr. Yang, you may know that white nationalists are supporting you online. They seem to have seized on some of your statements, which they say are proof that you are particularly concerned about white people. Why do you think they're drawn to your candidacy?
It's been a point of confusion because I don't look much like a white nationalist. The closest thing we could come up with for it was that I retweeted the New York Times saying that Americans are dying of opiates in record numbers, so much so that more people are dying than being born in various communities. And those communities were largely white communities in the Midwest and the South. So I've completely disavowed any of that support. I don't want the support of anyone who has any kind of agenda that's different than the agenda of this campaign. And our slogan is humanity first. We're trying to solve the problems and improve the lives for tens of millions of Americans.
In your book, you do say the group I worry about most is poor whites. Why are you most concerned about that group, poor whites?
Well, in the context of my book, I was suggesting, to Constance's point, how is this tribalism and violence going to manifest itself? And so the group I was most worried about was poor whites who felt like they had no future, and then that violence would emerge in large part because that group would become increasingly angry and distressed. And so that's the context of the book, but I am most concerned about that group in terms of the nationalism that Constance was describing.
Now, I've heard Andrew Yang before, and he has some decent ideas financially, but I notice, and you notice the same thing as well, he knows the group of people that will cause a problem in this country if basically things don't go their way. He said it in his book. He's acknowledging this. But at the same time, he did not want to put any kind of legislation out there to criminalize or call white nationalists domestic terrorists. This is why they are liking him and supporting him, because he is saying some things that they like. And I found out on many different occasions when Donald Trump refused to disavow white nationalists, when Donald Trump would kind of just gloss over what they're saying or trying to minimize it on the white supremacist websites, they are excited by that. They say, hey, that's our man, because they didn't call them out and say what they're going to do with them. So Andrew Yang did not want to make any promise about calling white supremacist terrorists for what they are. He didn't want to do that. Now, that says a lot about Andrew Yang. Now, you say you don't want to have no support from them.
But why wouldn't you want to deal with them, especially when you have something like Charlottesville, especially when you have the history of white supremacist terrorism in this country for hundreds of years? It's not like this is just something new that came up and you don't know how to, just no data on it or nothing. No, this has been hundreds of years of this. And if you criminalize it as it should be criminalized, it should be labeled domestic terrorism and domestic terrorist organizations. It would help put a stop to it. As much as you criminalize Islamic terrorists or certain ones who are right-wing terrorists, you call some of them that. Why is it that you are afraid to put legislation on the table for white supremacist terrorists? Because they terrorize everybody. You understand that? They don't just terrorize one group. And it has to be something related to national security. That's how you would have to look at that. But if you're thinking, oh, well, I want to get some of that Trump base, then maybe that's where he's at with it, so he don't want to call them out. But he utterly, in my opinion, failed big time on that question. And that says a lot about him and where he's going to go with some things, in my opinion. If you cannot deal with the race issue in this country, you should not be in that position. We already got a lunatic in office right now, 45, that is galvanizing the lowest common denominator of this country, the worst of the worst, the ignorant of the ignorant. This guy likes to stir up. And you see where we at today. This country is so divided. It is divided like pre-Civil War divided. Everyone is at each other's throats, no matter what it is. If it's not color, it's religion. If it's not religion, it's gender. If it's not gender, it's sexual orientation. If it's not sexual orientation, it's, class. Everyone is just divided at each other. And even the scriptures teach that if a kingdom is divided against itself, it will fall. So America is at a ripe time to fall. You don't pay attention to that. Nobody can have a conversation. Everybody's in their own little group. Nobody can come to the table and have a happy median somewhere. No one can compromise on anything. Everything is a mob mentality, no matter what side it is. You don't agree with me, I'm pissed off at you. You don't agree with me, I'm pissed off at you. So, you want to bully people and make people, think like you think. And it's going on all over the place. And so whatever president come in behind Donald Trump, they got to be the president of peace and healing. And Andrew Yang don't sound like he can do that, because if he can't deal with the race question, and he definitely have to quail down these white supremacists, because they have been allowed to have wings to flutter around and do whatever they want to do with Trump. So yes, you have to clamp down on them the moment you get in there. And he definitely did not answer that question right. Not at all. I mean, what is you afraid of? That's the only thing I'm asking. Because last time I checked, you got to protect the country from all threats, foreign and domestic. But leave me a comment. Let me know think about this particular, situation with Andrew Yang. I don't know if some people are going to, continue to look into him. But personally, this is my opinion. He's not talking about anything related to ADOS. So he doesn't have my interest like that. But I just want to know what people think about him failing miserably about dealing with the white nationalist issue that is a #1 issue in this country.